All right, welcome back, bullfrogs. Okay, so we left off. They had just, Jack, as a raven, crow, had just gotten the diamond. And so here we are, chapter 10. It's called Where Is It? Jack and Annie perched on the ledge and peered into the nursery. Teddy's lantern and hazel twig were still on the floor, but there was no sign of Teddy. "Teddy's not here yet," croaked Annie. "Let's go ahead and put the diamond back in its place." Jack didn't move. He didn't want to give up the diamond quite yet. It still made him feel incredibly brave. "Jack," croaked Annie, "let's put it back in its hiding place. I'll move the tapestry." Annie flapped to the long tapestry hanging on the wall. Fluttering in the air, she took its edge in her beak. She tried to pull it aside, but it was too heavy. She let go. "I can't move it," she croaked. "Not as long as I'm a raven. I guess we'll have to wait for Teddy to change us back into ourselves." She flapped to the window ledge and landed beside Jack. Jack was relieved. The longer he could hold on to the diamond, the better. "Hey," croaked Annie, "maybe we could use Teddy's magic hazel twig ourselves. I can come up with better rhymes than him anyway. It won't hurt to try." Jack shook his head, but Annie didn't notice. She hopped down to the hazel twig under the window. She carefully picked it up with her beak. She fluttered back up to the ledge beside Jack. Then she moved her head from side to side, passing the twig over Jack's feathered head, his body, his wings, and his claws. The twig passed over her feathery body and wings as well. With the twig still in her beak, she made a deep croaking sound. "Ha ha ree ree, ja ja ah nee. Oh, hazel twig from hazel tree, make him Jack and make me me." There was a mighty roar and a flash of light and a blast of heat. Then Jack heard Annie giggle. "Yippee! I made the magic work for us, look." Jack looked down at his arms and legs and feet. "Oh, man," he breathed. Ockney and Jaw were gone. Annie and Jack were back. Jack wiggled his fingers and toes. He felt his face, his mouth, his nose, his ears. He loved having his own body back. "Teddy's going to be so surprised," said Annie. "He acts like he's the only kid who can do magic." She looked around the nursery. "Hi, we're back," she called to the invisible children. "Guess what? We've got the diamond." "The diamond? Where is it?" said Jack. "I must have dropped it when you changed us." Suddenly they heard a swoosh and a flapping at the window. "Teddy!" cried Annie. She and Jack whirled around, but Teddy wasn't there. Instead, perched on the ledge of the nursery window was a horrifying creature. He was part human and part raven. He had silky feathers for hair, a beak for a nose, sharp claws, and a billowing feathered cape that glistened in the moonlight like shiny black armor. "Good evening," said the Raven King. Chapter 11 is called Or Else. Jack and Annie were too stunned to speak. Staring at the bizarre creature, Jack remembered the story of the Raven King, how the king had wanted to be a bird, how he had stolen a spell from the Wizard of Winter, how the spell had worked only halfway and left him half bird and half human. The Raven King jumped from the window to the floor. One by one, his raven bodyguards swooshed into the room after him. At least 20 ravens came through the window. Soon, Jack and Annie were surrounded by dark wings, sharp beaks, and bright eyes. Once his guards were in place, the Raven King twisted his head from side to side, looking from Jack to Annie. "Where are the 2 ravens who stole my diamond?" he asked in a raspy voice. "What diamond?" asked Annie. Here's a picture. See, he looks like half bird, half man. And there they are. What ravens?" asked Jack, his voice trembling. He wished desperately that he still had the diamond of destiny to give him strength and courage. "The ravens that came to this castle after raiding my treasure room," said the Raven King. "Where are they hiding?" Jack tried to imagine that he was still holding the diamond. "We don't know anything about them," he said in a low, steady voice. Pretending to hold the diamond actually made him feel brave. "You don't know anything about them?" said the Raven King. "No," said Jack. "You must have the wrong castle." Ah, the wrong castle, said the Raven King. Yes, said Jack, perhaps you're right, said the Raven King. But are you certain you haven't seen them? They look very much like this little one here. The Raven King threw his cape over his shoulder and held up an iron bird cage. A raven was held captive inside. Y'all know who that is? I bet that's Teddy. Ja-Otney, the raven croaked. Teddy, cried Annie. His name is Teddy, said the Raven King. How charming. I've caught a Teddy. I think he'll make a wonderful pet, don't you? Jack was horrified to see Teddy trapped in the Raven King's cage. It's not charming, he said. It's cruel. You better let him go or else. Yeah, let him go, said Annie, or else. Or else, said the Raven King. Or else what? With backward jerks of his head, he laughed a raspy laugh. As the king laughed, Jack glanced at the floor under the window. He saw the hazel twig. He moved toward it. The Raven King caught sight of him. His laugh stopped abruptly. Cree, craw, he croaked to one of his bodyguards. Jack dashed for the twig, but before he could grab it, the king's bodyguard had swooped across the floor and picked up the twig in his beak. As the raven carried it to the top of the window, Jack noticed that one of his tail feathers was bent. Jack, look, it's Rock, said Annie. She called up to the bird, Rock, Rock. From his perch above the window, the raven looked down at Annie. Rock, it's me, Annie, she said. I helped you when the people in the village threw stones at you, remember? What nonsense, croaked the Raven King. Bring me the stick, bird. Rock didn't move. Gripping the hazel twig in his beak, he stared down at Annie. Give the twig to Jack, Rock, she said, so he can turn Teddy back into a boy. So that ugly little stick is a magic wand, is it? Said the Raven King. Bring it to me, bird, now. Don't do it, Rock, said Annie. Don't let him boss you around any more. The raven stared at Annie for a moment. I wonder what he's going to do. The raven stared at Annie for a moment with his dark brown eyes. He looked at the Raven King. He looked back at Annie. Then he swooped down to Jack and dropped the hazel twig at his feet. Jack grabbed it. Traitor! The Raven King shrieked at Rock. You'll pay for this. He lunged toward the raven. Rock tried to escape, but the king grabbed him by the throat. Jack had to save Rock. He pointed the twig at the Raven King's back and shouted, Oh, hazel twig from hazel tree, make him what he wanted to be. A deafening wind roared through the room. A blinding light flashed. Then all was clear. The Raven King had vanished. His cape lay on the floor. Rock hopped away unharmed. From under the feathered cape came a hoarse cry. Ack! Annie lifted the cape and uncovered a tiny raven. Oh, she said so softly. The bird stretched out his scrawny neck. Ack! He croaked again. Hello yourself, Annie said, smiling. She stroked the downy feathers on the creature's head. Then she looked up at Jack. How did you come up with that rhyme? It just came to me, said Jack. I knew I had to save Rock, but I didn't want to hurt the Raven King. I think I actually felt sorry for him. So you helped him finally get what he wanted, said Annie. You turned him into a baby raven. Yeah, Jack said. Now he can live his whole life as a bird. Rock flew up to the window ledge. He looked around at the other ravens. It was clear he had become their new leader. Grow, grow, Rock croaked. He stepped aside. The raven troops began to leave the nursery one by one. Two of them escorted the new member of their flock as he timidly flapped his small wings. Rock was the last to leave. He stared at Annie and Jack with a long gaze. Then he lifted off the window ledge and flew away into the light of the silver dawn. All right, tomorrow we will finish our book with chapter 12. It's called A New Day. We'll read chapter 12 and 13, and we will be finished with our book. Hope you've been enjoying it. Talk to you later. See you tomorrow. Bye.